All right, well, we're down to finishing touches around here. We were able to put this one long 2x8 all the way around as a cocktail ledge. It flies all throughout. It ties the top of these posts together, holds them plumb, controls all of that. And each one of these joints where they come together, there's a heavy finished, it's a T15 finish head screw that goes through here at an angle. So as I've been going around, now that was the case when I filled that with that sealant and I used it to pull it tight and hold it there while the sealant dried. But I've been backing these out because we're putting a back angle underneath this thing. And I made a bunch of prototypes. I don't know where they all went, but I wanted a 10-degree undercut and nipped corners is what we decided for the ends here. We were talking about just a point, but I think it was a little extreme for the customer. There'll be meat enough here to change that once or twice more if something needs to change in the future. But this is what we're going to do. I'm going to take less of a corner though, because I want to do the same thing on these corners, and to take that much gets us too close to the outside corner of the post. So we're going to go about an inch. Once I put the back angle on to both sides, then we'll go 1 inch over from the outside corner, make a mark, connect it, and that'll be what we cut off, which is what we did elsewhere. Now I've made it all the way to here, undercutting that railing, but down here you can see, and this is just it ties in with the nature of the corners of the deck to begin with, and I think it looks pretty sharp. We're going to put a small chamfer or a small bevel on this top edge with a router once we're all done here. And here's showing taking that corner off. You can always come back and take more, but you can't really put things back. So here's where I missed a screw that I couldn't back out. Some of them stripped in the lumber, one out of every 10 or 15, because they have double threads. They have the threads that pull them in, and then the threads at the top that are supposed to pull both pieces together, which makes them really nice in a lot of ways. But taking them out and trying to put it back wiped it out, so that'll have to be cut flush, and then I'll put a little nail polish in this wood tone on the end of it, fresh end of it, to save it from corrosion and stuff. And there was one here, but for the rest of them, they came out no problem. The way that I approached this was to measure around and see. I had from 7 1/8 to like 7 5/8 in terms of width, because they're just rough lumber. So I found the center line of the two ends of each particular piece. I measured, I divided it in half, I put a center line, and from the center line, I measured out 3.5 inches, which means in the end, these are all gonna measure, without the chamfer, at about 7. Let's check that, bud. The idea being that they measure about 7. So in the middle, it's a little bit, it's a little light, if anything. We also had to mitigate, coming in at an angle, and they're looking for there to still be plenty of overhang here. At a certain point, it's unprofessional to, lose your overhang. So we still have 3/8 of an inch or so there, which is about as minimal. I would have preferred a half, but this is all, once again, in a perfect situation, it's different. But lumber, especially outside, you have to play a little jazz. So we made it to here. We're going to keep going. This has been tricky. If any of you are really paying attention and are really working in the field, you know that I've got to set up and plunge. I've got to set the shoe way up, and I've got to plunge and then proceed. The outside corners are nice because I can follow through. The inside corners, I actually have to start standing here with this away from me, plunge and go. Not to mention ripping with a battery saw. When the lumber is tacky and a bit damp and stuff like that, sucks battery up like you wouldn't believe. So I've got all of them on the charger right now, and then I'm following up to finish these inside corners. I'll use the oscillating tool just to completely take this out, and you get a little bit of circular saw mark that you'll take out with the sander. And then a couple of these flip up outlets were hitting this lower stringer on the balustrade, so I went ahead and put a back angle on them, which now they flip up real nice and pass, and that is echoes this, etc. Whether or not I put a small bevel on that, TBD, and we're going to decide that before I pull any of the others, and we'll either rip that and bevel it, or just rip it. But I don't want to put it in and then take it back out to put the bevel on. Leaving it in over the wintertime was a professional decision, so that they were basically trained through the elements to live in the position that, you know, that they're going to be in. You would think they would all just stay straight, but if they sat in a group, especially with that groove milled in the top, and one side of everybody got the sun, the other side sat in the cool ground in the moisture, by the time this, you know, we came back around to get to them, they'd have been all twisted into junk, and, you know, they wouldn't have been something you could even return because it would have been purchased last year and they'd milled with a groove already. So we had one rogue here that went crazy in place even, but the rest of them have all behave themselves really nice. So we'll quickly pop them out and we'll treat them. And here's the other one here. Now this one I did the inside and the out, so it's appreciably thinner, but I think it's just snazzy. I mean, that's obviously a 2x4. This is a custom cross section, which is the idea here. We're going to elevate this whole thing by just operating on the lumber down at the end here to create custom profiles rather than just throwing everything together. And we're going to treat the outside corners of these posts too. Then we've got the little step lights that we've got to push into the kerf that's under here. So you get a little light that comes down. Those will be plugged in. But I pulled all the wire and connected all the outlets up. Maybe you've seen on my Instagram last week. And obviously they've got their patio furniture here, and there's going to be a sectional there, so it's starting to look the part and to be something that they can come out and enjoy between when I'm here just finishing up. And now the game is just don't make a mistake, because if you do, you can pull the entire piece out and start all over again, which we don't want. I filled these cracks and I'm going to do the rest of them now. I had to, like Bondo, plane that on and leave it to vulcanize and turn into a hard sandable rubber for a week or two. But then it sands right off if you don't rush the process. So we'll use that on some of these other cracks and top off some of these other miters, and the top crack specifically on these little guys. I mean, they look black now, they'll look black once the sealant's in there, and the sealant should stretch. And holy crap, I get to the end, by the way, and this last little piece, when there's a strip behind the saw, and I'm trying to pull and rip him off of there and just disconnect him where he's welded, butt welded by his end, the tiny little end of him, by that sealant that we're talking about. I guess that's not it. Anyway, I'm out here fighting and ripping and tearing and yanking just to get that little tiny bit of contact, surface contact, bit of sealant to let go of the end of that lumber, which, in long story short, I'm heartened by that. See, I haven't come back to look at my work with that sealant in it 20 or 30 years later, if we're so lucky here, because I'm not that old and I haven't had the opportunity. But I'm heartened by the fact that it fought me so hard already. I think it's a great, being polyurethane, it's an adhesive, and being for exterior, it's black, and it's been chemically, you know, prepared and designed to be out here. I think it's just a really nice, inexpensive touch to put in all of this joinery. So hopefully we get to do some final photos soon and some good coverage. I'm gonna clean this crap off of here, and then I'm gonna do, you know, see, you got shims and stuff in here. These are all the things that look ugly and unprofessional, but it's like, it's what's necessary to get everything to work out at the top level. And we'll clean up big boogers, and I'll do a real clean, tidy, black inside corner caulking job with that sealant when I'm all done here, so that from a low angle, relaxing in your Adirondack chair, it's just a nice, clean black shadow that you don't notice. Oh, and we got this sanded out, and it'll get better and better. Just got to get a little further with it. Stay tuned.